Hey, I'm Sharon, and I am here to encourage your soul, mind, will, and emotions in order to live a soul able life. I am excited to have this conversation with you today because sometimes we go through things in life and we want to know if God sees us. Yes, He does. So, I was recently doing a study in the book of Genesis about Abraham, Sarah, and Hagar. What a triangle. And I wouldn't necessarily say a love triangle, but it's a little messy. So let me just give a backstory for those who may not be familiar with these particular people. Abraham was a faithful man of God, and he took God at his word. He trusted everything that God told him, and that was accounted for his righteousness. So God blessed this man immensely. I mean, he was very blessed and very wealthy and prosperous. He owned land and cattle and servants. So he was really blessed. And his wife's name was Sarah. Now, Abraham and Sarah had been married since their youth. However, they didn't have any children. And as they grew older, Abraham inquired to God about one of the persons who run his house, Eliezer. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, being the heir of his possessions because he had so many things to leave behind. But that wasn't in God's plan. God said that he was going to give Abraham a seed and he would be the heir of his possessions. And so Abraham trusted him because he always trusted God's word. So time went on. He and Sarah were growing older by the day, of course. And so Sarah decided, that she was going to come up with this big idea, this big plan, I guess, to help God out. Now, first of all, let's just back a little bit because God had already promised Abraham a seed. And when God makes promises, he doesn't need our help to make it come to pass. So she went to Abraham and told him of her plan. She had this handmaid or this servant named Hagar, which was an Egyptian woman. And she said, I can have children by her for you, and that can be your seed. So, Abraham agreed to this. Now, let me pause again because, like I said, Hagar was just a servant, basically a slave and subject to Sarah. So this is not something that this woman asked for or maybe desired or wanted. This was something that she basically had to do because she was told to do it. So she ended up in this situation I won't say by force, but she was drafted into this situation. And she was obedient to it. So Sarah gave Hagar to Abraham. And then Abraham, he went in to Hagar and Hagar conceived. Now, after Hagar conceived, she had some kind of look on her face, maybe a look of despise that Sarah didn't like. So she went to Abraham and told him that she didn't like the way Hagar was looking at her. Hagar had despise for her in her eyes. Now, I don't know if Hagar was really just despising this woman or if Hagar was maybe saying, hey, I did what you told me, now what? Or here I am pregnant with this child and I didn't even want to be pregnant at this time, or I didn't even ask to be in this situation. I don't know. The Bible says she looked at her with despise in her eyes. Sarah took it as the way she wanted to. And she told Abraham, and Abraham was like, hey, this is your maid. Do it what you want to do with her, And so Sarah did. Sarah came down on this woman hard, y'all. She started treating this woman so harshly that Hagar couldn't take anymore. She couldn't take this heavy hand that Sarah was dealing her, so she ran away. Have you ever been at a point in your life where, first of all, you didn't even ask to be in the situation? You may have been born into a situation that you didn't ask to be in, or born into a family that you didn't ask to be in, or in an abusive relationship, or a bad situation on the job, or whatever challenges you may be facing, assault or something of that nature. You didn't ask for that. You didn't want or desire that. But that's the hand that life dealt you. And you're just at the end of your rope. And you just can't take it anymore. And you just want to escape. You just want to run away. You just want to get away. Well, let me just tell you the rest of the story about Hagar. So this lady ran away into the wilderness. Didn't have nowhere to go. Didn't have anything. And she's just out there in the wilderness. And so the voice of the Lord spoke to her and said, Hagar, what are you doing? Like, where are you going in today's terms, that is? Where you think you're going? What are you doing? Return back to Sarah and submit to her. What? This lady drafts me or forced me into a situation that I didn't ask to be in. And then when I do exactly what she told me to do, she get mad and treat me bad. And now I got to go back and submit to her. I'm just saying, maybe this is what she was thinking. Probably what I would have been thinking. But anyway, she continues to listen to the Lord. The Lord does give her some words of encouragement. He tells her or confirms to her that she has conceived a child. She'll name him Ishmael. And he was going to greatly multiply this child. He was going to make a nation from this child. And so at that moment, Hagar realized that God does see her. So she names him the God who sees me. So all that she has been through thus far, she realizes that God sees her. So what does Hagar do? She's obedient to God. She goes back. She sits under the hand and is subject to Sarah. Now, I don't know if Sarah continues to treat this lady harshly or not. Probably so. Probably especially because she tried to run away and escape. So she might have really laid it down hard to her for that too. But anyway, time comes where Hagar has the son and Abraham names the son Ishmael. Okay. So now this son is growing up. And of course, Abraham loves his son. Time goes on. This child becomes a teenager. Abraham is now 99 years old. He goes to the father and he's speaking to God. And I would say that maybe he's suggesting to God, according to the scriptures, that, Ishmael will live before you, Lord. In other words, Ishmael will be my heir. But God confirms the promise that he had already made to Abraham. And he says, you will have a seed or a child with your wife, and that child will be your heir. So basically, Abraham has gone to God twice now and suggested that the man that cares for his house will be his heir, and now his seed by Hagar will be his heir. But God is like, no, that's not my plan. You're going to have a child by your wife. When God makes a promise, he does not need to change the promise. He doesn't need to revise the plan of the promise. He doesn't need to deviate from the promise. It is what it is. He said it. That's what it's going to be. He said that Abraham and Sarah will bring forth a seed that he will give them to be the heir of his possessions. And that's what he meant. And so that just because it had been years later and they had went up several years in age doesn't change a thing, because God doesn't operate by our time or by our age. Those are just numbers and things that help us to keep track of time on the earth. God, he holds time in his hands. Like nothing measures his existence. Nothing measures the time in which God operates, because he is the one that is in control of it all. So if God has made a promise to you, I don't care how long ago it's been, continue to stand on God's promise. Trust him. It will come to pass when he says it's time for it to come to pass. Yeah, maybe it's taken a long time for us, but it's not too late for God. He already has that perfect timing for the perfect plan that he have predestined for your life. Okay, so to move on with the story, Abraham's 99, Sarah's 90. He laughs a little bit, but he trusts God. When Sarah hears about it, she laughs and chuckles in her heart about it, because she's thinking, saying, what? She's past menopause and everything at this time, But anyway, so it does come to pass, because God's promises always come to pass. So Sarah brings forth a child by her husband, Abraham. They named him Isaac. And she's thinking to herself, like, who would have thought in my old age that I would be nursing a child of my own? But yes, she did. So time passed, the child is weaned. And so Abraham decides to throw a celebration because Isaac is now weaned from his mother, Sarah. And okay, Ishmael, he's a teenager now. So, he comes by the celebration and he begins to mock. He's mocking, and Sarah sees it. But she don't like it. Let me tell you something. Sarah don't play, okay? This woman don't play, because she's like, no. So she went to Abraham and she told Abraham, Ishmael will not be heir with my son. I caught him mocking him. He got to go, him and his mother. So she told Abraham, hey, they got to go. They got kicked out of the house, y'all. Now, this grieved Abraham because, of course, he loved his son. And I'm sure he had some feelings for Hagar, too, now. That goes without saying. But God told Abraham to do what Sarah asked him to do. They had to go. So, the next morning he gets them a bottle of water and he gets them some bread and bam, off they go. So here's Hagar again in another situation she didn't ask to be in. This time she got dismissed. She got kicked out the house. She had to leave, not on her own, but because she was forced out. And I know this woman right now is like, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? How's this little bottle of water going to last me and my son in the wilderness and this little piece of bread, But anyway, so she's out there in the wilderness. Time passed and she ran out of water. They ran out of bread. And the boy is weak and basically dying. So she sets this young lad up against the tree and she goes over to the other side because she can't stand to see her son dying, crying out and dying and weak and thirsty, hungry. They don't have nowhere to go. And so here she is crying out, and God hears the voice of her son and her, and he speaks to her. And he says, Hagar, do not fear. And he began to repeat the promises that he had already given her about her son. See, God had already told her that he was going to greatly multiply her son before she even gave birth to him. Here we go again. God's promises. I don't care what it looks like. You could be on what appears to be your deathbed or what have you, but God's promises will come to pass. Even when it seems or appears like it's too late for us, it's never too late for God. So he reassures her that he is going to multiply her son Ishmael and make him a great nation. And then he opens her eyes and shows her a well of water. Y'all, right here for me, this story was the turning point. He opened her eyes and showed her a well of water. Now she goes, she fills the water bottle up, gives the son something to drink, and he regains his strength. So he's going to live, she's going to live. But what this story does for me is God still sees her. He saw her all the way through the process. He still sees her. He heard their voices crying out in the wilderness. He didn't leave her. He didn't forsake her. He opens her eyes, and not only does he show her water for them to drink, but I believe at this point, he opens her eyes and Hagar finally realizes that she is a free woman, y'all. She is free and out of bondage. She is no longer Sarah's slave. She no longer has to submit or subject to Sarah. She does not have to go back under that woman's harsh hand. She's free. God has delivered this woman. And now she sees that. And not just that, but then she goes back to her homeland of Egypt and she chooses a wife for her son. See, through this process, she developed. She grew in strength. She grew in wisdom. She grew in knowledge, discernment, and discretion because, God had promised Abraham that this man was going to be the father of 12 princes. So she had to have rightful discernment to be able to choose a wife for him who was worthy of that. See, this woman is on top now. She's free. She's choosing had she been back in the land with Abraham and Sarah, then they may have chosen his wife. But no, now she's in charge and she's getting to choose the rightful wife for her son. Not only that, now she is the matriarch of 12 princes. This woman is free and she is living her own life now. God has promised some things to you. Trust him. It will come to pass. I don't care what the situation looks like right now. I don't care what valleys you've had to go down in, or it doesn't matter what you've had to go through, Whether it was something that was forced on you and you didn't even ask to be in that situation. You didn't even do anything to be in that situation. You were drafted into that situation. You were forced into that situation. You were born into that situation. Or some kind of relationship turned out to be a bad situation. But God is able to not only keep his eye on you and see you through this thing. He hears your voice when you cry out about it. He has not forgotten you. He will make his promise come to pass in your life. Put your trust in him and obey him. Remember, every time Hagar found herself in a situation, she always did what God told her to do. She went back and submitted to Sarah. No, God knows she didn't want to go back. Who would have wanted to go back to that? But she was obedient and she did what God told her to do. Hey everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. I definitely want to hear your perspective about the conversation that we just had. And it won't be a two-way conversation unless you go ahead and type your comments below. I want to hear from you. If you like having conversations like this, then go ahead and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you'll know when I'm back on again. Also, like and share this video with others so we can bring them into the conversation as well. Again, thank you so much. Be blessed and have a wonderful day.